start now.
So, what are we doing today?
We are going to be channeling some very potent frequencies actually, and let's start.
So, how do you channel?
For me, I channel through my vessel in a meditative state. So I have to be induced into this deep sort of zen, and through the silence I hear the downloads, or I can see energy. There's like different outputs on how to channel. Like some people are clairvoyant, they can see the channeling. Some people can hear it, it's like audient, clairaudient. So for me, I can see and hear both. But yeah, how do you channel?
Again, it's sort of this like something that arrives from an orientation of silence. Kind of like you become a calm ocean, and then when you're a calm ocean, you can notice the subtle ripples more, the subtle thought forms, sense forms, feeling forms, and that's that's how I channel. I channel in a different a variety of different sorts of modalities, whether it's music, writing, speaking. Channeling is, people often think of it in terms of just creativity essentially, because and often people describe creativity in terms of becoming a muse almost. And when you're becoming a muse, you're emptying yourself of everything and then creating that space for the channeling to sort of arise through you. You're not trying to cling to a certain idea or cling to things, you're trying to become receptive, really, And so that's what channeling means to me. It's a movement of opening such that you create a space for, nature to flow through whatever is meant to sort of arise.
Yeah, I had a question I wanted to ask you. How can one increase their capacity to receive such frequencies? How does one empty one's vessel?
Well, that's something that's there's many different sorts of threads that can go down, because preparing your body and your mind to be able to hold higher frequencies it's not necessarily something that you can do immediately. It's like tending to a garden, I feel. And tending to a garden, you plant certain seeds. Meditation is a way of planting a seed, I suppose, when you repeatedly engage in the practice of paying attention. As well, there's a sort of a process of preparing your body through certain health practices, ensuring that you're not consuming toxic foods which lower your frequency. You're consuming foods that raise your frequency, so you're healthy, energetic, and free of negativity in your body. Everyone knows what it's like to eat a bad food and how that's a sort of your entire being is sort of crippled for a little bit. You can't really channel in that sort of mode of being. So you need to see your body really and your mind as a garden to cultivate and nourish in order to support being able to hold that sort of frequency.
Yeah, I sense that, and especially I think with Ascension, the diet plays a very, very sort of heavy role, doesn't it? Like the food that you intake, and I feel like certain foods have this higher frequency, so when you ingest them, you attune to that higher frequency as well, like fruits, for example. So with me, my diet, I happen to observe that I can receive a higher download better when I'm intaking more sort of fruits or like leafy greens and things like that. So I feel like each food item that you consume has a specific frequency, and some can aid your frequency and some of them can lower it. So it's basically like a science of the body that needs to be learned, I believe, in order to support your ascension process.
Yeah, and that's a journey that everyone has to take in terms of learning their body, in terms of becoming connected to their own intuitive bodily cues, their cues of digestion, how well does a certain food taste and feel in their body. That's as well a sort of an activity of meditation, of awareness, of bringing awareness to the way that food feels. And often in our sort of very busy culture where everyone's rushing around, they don't have time to prepare food, they often eat very convenient foods, packaged, processed food, which isn't nourishing at all. People's time is so taken away by the labours of work, and that they don't have the time or the energy to really dedicate to what really is a human need, a human right to create food for yourself and to create good food for yourself, and so there really needs to be a kind of an awakening in the kind of the mass consciousness regarding the importance of food, and as well the glamorization and marketing of toxic foods, which you'll see advertisements everywhere. People need to sort of shift their perception to looking at fast food as not as yummy, but as it's something that is toxic, but it's wrapped up in sprinkles to make it seem so alluring, and you'll see it sort of it's a very people need to really shed the illusion of food which tastes good maybe, because it sort of tickles all of our taste receptors in just the right kind of way, but it isn't good. It doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you feel energetic or well in your mind, in your body. But it's like people have to discover for themselves, really. That isn't it. Sometimes you need to deviate. You need to realise that I don't feel good when I eat this kind of thing. You need to experiment, become kind of scientist for yourself, and it's through becoming a scientist for yourself that you discover which foods are good for you. Which foods support you in your journey, and you are what you eat, and that is something that people need to seriously consider. When they suffer from certain mental and physical ailments, often there is a kind of the convenience of just going to a doctor and just having some kind of prescription medication just given to you. But people need to consider how they can intervene much earlier before the disease manifests by making alterations to their diet and the foods they're consuming. But that's a way of looking at medicine which is preventative rather than
Precaution.
Something that is preventing the arising of the disorder in the first place, as opposed to much of Western medicine, which seems to take a look at just a raw intervention and prescribe first medications to treat the symptoms of a problem which could have been prevented from arising in the first place by paying attention before. It's you can heal a lot with just food, and with your lifestyle and stuff like that. You don't need to rely on all these sort of
medical facilities.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also a kind of there's also the perverse financial incentive where many pharmaceutical companies, obviously are incentivized to create these medications to treat these disorders, which in the first place wouldn't need to arise if there was proper attention to food, to basic food, but yeah, that's a whole different kind of thing, the whole money component, obviously.
Financial incentive.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think ultimately what people need to think about is that their health, the responsibility of their health is first and foremost on them. They should learn to become their own doctor first and foremost, rather than having to rely on advice. Because they're the ones in their body at the end of the day. But obviously there are ways you can teach yourself, reading certain books, learning for yourself. Obviously there will always be people who experts who you can rely on. You can go to certain practitioners and stuff like that to help you in your journey, but you should first and foremost, in order to help them provide the right kind of guidance, they need to hear what you're reading about your body. That's a kind of a movement of awareness to your body. And but yeah, I've been rambling on a lot there. But,
no, I actually quite like your perspective on health and wellness and how the medical industry has become a money-making market because of the illness that they cause. So I think it was very important to stretch out and bring to the collective notice and awareness. And I had a few pointers that I wanted to include, which was a lot of people mostly focus on a taste of the food, and they focus more on what the flavors are like versus nutrition. So I want people to sort of understand the differentiation. Like something really bad for you can be really tasty, like a hamburger. It is not the taste that we are looking to satiate or satisfy. What we want, food is for nutrition. It is not to tickle your taste buds. Food is something that supports your body, keeps you alive. So nutrition needs to be more in focus versus flavors and taste. So I feel like a lot of people look at food in a very superficial manner. It's just like, oh, this is tasty, so I'm just gonna eat this, versus the nutritive value of what you're putting in. So I feel like if the minds were more sort of focused on nutrition and knowledge of what food has, what nutrients in it, and how it supports your body. Food knowledge, food wisdom is very, very important. That's why I would really promote people to look more into what you are eating and what it is made up of, like Ayurveda and stuff like that, because that is the knowledge of the food. You should know how a food can support your body and how food can also deteriorate your body. So there's negative food and there's positive food in frequencies, in terms of frequencies. So that is something that one must discern and learn, preferably from a very early age. But if not, there's still a lot of time and space to learn about healing your body and these forms of wellness and longevity of life. And food is very resourceful in order to promote that longevity of your lifespan, if that's something that people are looking for. But yeah, this is very, very informative.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's an important point that you made about the superficiality of totally looking at just the taste of a food and determining your food choices.
Based on taste.
Yeah, and ignoring the the fundamental aspects, which is food is meant to aid the regeneration of your cells, the growing, the healing of your body, and that's the primary purpose. And our sort of taste buds have evolved in order to discern which sort of elements in nature are supportive of that. And so that's why we're attracted to certain foods which are good and repulsed by foods which are toxic to offer, like rotten food and stuff like that. But in our modern kind of food environment, where we can design food and we can create a product which it mimics nutritious food, it mimics all the sensory outline of it, the outer layer of it, but it doesn't have the nutrients which
needed, which
were typically accompanying that food. Like that's why we're so attracted to it, like fatty foods, like sugary kind of foods and stuff like that, because those were the kinds of foods which have that quality in our ancestral past would aid our survival. But now we're in an environment often of caloric abundance, where we can easily access food, and this leads to a kind of evolutionary mismatch, where when we're in a calorically abundant environment, we'll tend to overconsume fatty, sugary foods. I mean, fat in and of itself isn't bad, but it tends to be fried foods which are fried in like certain like vegetable oils and stuff like that, which maybe taste very nice, but they're not. They're fundamentally sort of they mimic the taste, they mimic all the stuff that we've evolved to like, but they do not provide what they should have provided, what in the past they would have provided.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting what you say about the
Evolution of food.
yeah, the evolution of food, and how this is why we see a lot of a resurgence of diets which are oriented to foods which existed in our ancestral past, like Paleolithic diets, which tends to prioritize foods which would have been available in our paleo time period where we were evolving in, and it's avoiding foods which, you know, are evolutionary novel, you know, which we haven't really had time to establish a relationship with. You know, many foods which you see in your supermarkets, when you look at the ingredients, and you'll see a bunch of added chemicals, preservatives and stuff that is, you know, to chemically assemble a product. That's not really food. There's a certain, they have the shiny appearance of food, but it's not. You know, food is best consumed raw and in its natural kind of form, grown yourself.
Living foods.
Yeah, living foods, exactly. And even better, if you're able to actually grow your own food, then you have your own established relationship with the food, and it eliminates the trust that you have to have in these sort of commercial supply chains, which often have, you know, whether it's the use of certain herbicides, pesticides, to sort of, you know, which help them create a food product, but it isn't a
natural product.
It's not a sacred food item. You know, when you turn food into a raw product, there's a process of desacralizing it, you know, and it brings it, rather than being sort of a necessary medicine or spiritual integration, which food really is, when you turn it rawly, exclusively into a product, and you're not looking at the nourishing component, but you're only looking at how much money can I extract out of this product. That's the process of, you know, producing food on a wide scale, but there's something that's lost in that process. And, you know, that's what happens slowly, and that's what happens now when we go into supermarkets and, you know, make the foods that we see, that there's something that's lost from it. But yeah, there was something I was going to say, but I've lost the thread. But it was about the sort of, how food has been desacralized in our culture, particularly in busy Western culture. You know, there isn't the time in the day dedicated to cooking and nourishing food. Many people cook for their kids just by throwing something in the oven, and pre-packaged frozen items, all that sort of stuff, because they don't have the time, they're too busy. And when we're too busy, we lose these sacred activities of our day, which are meant to ground us and give us a kind of a unity with source. You know, food is a way of providing a unity with nature, particularly when you're consuming something that grows out of the ground. But when it's in a product and it's in a bag and stuff like that, you forget the sacred source of food, which is from the earth.
Connection,
But if you grow it yourself, then you do have that connection. And for thousands and thousands of years, we did grow our food, we collected our food ourselves. But now in our current environment, we become detached from nature, become detached from the natural source of food. And this is why we have fast food chains, because people are so detached. You know, they're detached from the suffering of the animal that was necessary in order to consume that hamburger. Would they have the courage to slay that animal itself? No, because it's convenient, it's comfortable, and they can detach from the suffering. It's very easy for a lot of human beings to, you know, partake in certain collective activities unconsciously, such as whether it's the consumption of meat, consumption of factory farmed foods. They can do that because they're emotionally dissociated, they're not conscious. But if they were to become conscious, then they would realise, oh, what am I doing? You know, that's the awakening process, you know.
The lack of awareness is very prominent in the society currently, hence because everything comes in such a neat, packaged sort of box, and they completely forget the process the journey for that thing to appear in front of them. Just because it's like manufactured now through these machines, they think it just magically appears in front of them and then you can just eat it. They lose the process, they lose the touch, they don't know what's behind that box. How did that hamburger come into your hand? What had to go through in order for that to be here? And I feel like that is such a good and very, very, very enlightened perspective that was very necessary to bring forth. And yeah, I feel like if people were more involved in the process of organically sort of having that relationship with food, they could enjoy their food and respect food versus just find it like this thing that you humanly do, which is just eat. No, you're eating because there's a reason why your body needs to be supported. That is the purpose of food. The purpose of food isn't flavor and taste like the culinary arts have made it to be. Yes, it is obviously nice to indulge in your senses and have pleasure through food. That is one of the practices. But if you're only focusing on pleasure of the food and not the nutrient of the food, you lose a whole nourishing aspect. We as human beings need to be taught how to nourish our mind, our body, and our spirit. Nourishment would be, I believe, the theme of what we wish to speak about. Nourishment and healing all aspects of your being, because all three make up of who you are and no part can be neglected. And it's very funny because in this society, nourishment is something that we don't have time for, but it is essential for our survival. People think that it's leisure to sit and nourish yourself, or have time for food that is home cooked or something, because we don't have time. But it's so funny, if you don't have time to nourish yourself, you're basically killing yourself, technically, if you really think about it. So you must spend a very significant amount of time caring for yourself enough that you know how to keep your body intact, or we're just machines under working for some organization. It's very lifeless. The process of life has become very lifeless. It's devoid of truth and life, and food is one of the most necessary changes and instant changes that we can make for people who are inspired to take action to better themselves, to come back to nature, to come back in that rhythm of life. People who want to indulge in life will find a love and longevity of prolonging their lifespan. When you love yourself enough, you want to live. And with depression and anxiety and more denser frequencies like that, people have lost the will to live a life, so they don't really care about healing, because what's the point of living? That's where we're at, so when you're stuck at that sort of dense frequency, it doesn't matter to you what you're eating, because you don't care. So the base of this issue, the root of this issue is people are not inspired to live anymore, because it has become so sort of artificial. Everybody knows, the whole collective, the human collective knows that they're living in an artificial world, but they feel helpless. So that's where people like you and me step in. We provide them a space, we provide them this information that, hey, there is a lot of things outside the matrix. Yes, there is still nature is still here to support us. We're not alone. Yes, there are a gazillion factories and there's a lot of bullshit going on, but there is also a lot of Ayurveda and nature and different people and practices that promote a healthier way of existence. So choosing that is a personal choice, I believe, but there are options, and this is kind of like a hope to show you that yes, there's this side of the coin, but there's also the other side of the coin, which is entirely filled with a natural way of living that we promote and we bring to you. And I feel like this will change a lot of perspectives, definitely, because we've shown both sides now. And
I think that's a very potent way to conclude the video, I believe. Lots of threads that we can extend for future episodes, particularly regarding the artificiality of life for a
Existence,
lot of
yes.
people, and how that has created a situation where the process of healing loses its appeal, you know? And we need to also, you know, have empathy for, you know, why do people choose to indulge in denser frequencies, such as the consumption of lower foods and stuff like that. But there's a way of coping with the stresses of life, and we need to ask ourselves, you know, what is causing the stresses of life in the first place? What has become so unbearable about people's ways of being, you know? And that's something that I think we should pick up in a future sort of episode. I think we said a lot already, and there's plenty of people to you know,
nibble on,
to stick their teeth into, to use a food pun.
Yeah.
I think we'll leave that there.
We'll leave that there.
Okay, fabulous. Goodbye everyone.
Bye.
Adios.
Wow.